Okay, Battletech enthusiasts, let's take a look, mech analysis, at the Blackjack, a very, very interesting medium mech. So my first kind of foray into the Blackjack was when I was list building some of my long-range support elements. One of the things that I try to do in all my wargaming systems that I enjoy, but especially Battletech, I cook up some sort of idea, some sort of role on the battlefield. Two examples we've looked at: taking long-range missile firepower, superior firepower, and figuring out how to leverage that on the table. Another example would be my mass locust list. How can I just take like 6, 8, or 10 locusts and actually swarm and win against that? Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But the idea is to come up with a theme and through Total Warfare Combined Arms, select units that will make that theme work, that will make that theme happen. Really quick as an example, just to kind of begin to frame the Blackjack, in my long-range missile list, the idea is there's 3 elements, 3 groups. What I put in those 3 groups depends on the battle value. The first group are the long-range elements: longbows, archers, LRM carriers. So they're going to get into a position and just shoot lots and lots of missiles. Well, my opponent's going to hide. So now I need some sort of, the second piece of that list is going to be something to spot indirect fire. Light mechs, Jenners, locusts, just to kind of, thorn mech, just to kind of run and get that cross triangulation-y type stuff and, well, basically be able to see you and pound you with indirect fire. And then the third element of that list is the idea you're not just going to sit there and take it, you're going to roll up to my long-range missile elements and try to blow them up. So I need something to block you. I need something to stop you. Demolisher tanks or some sort of other, maybe a Warhammer, sometimes not an Orion always, T-Bolt, Thunderbolt, something like that that's going to move out and intercept. Well, Atlas would be great, but we have the points. Or I don't have the battle value for that always. Although in some larger games I do, and I'll fill it. Can't argue with an Atlas. If you have an abundance of points and you don't know what to take, can't go wrong with an Atlas on there, or a Stalker. So with that, with those elements, what I begin to do is now say, well, I need to have a list at multiple battle values. So it's one thing to write a list, and this is where the Blackjack comes in and say, okay, well, at 6,000 battle value, I take 2 archers and a longbow. So now I go to show up, and you want to play 2,000 battle value or 3,000 battle value. So I need to be able to scale my list down. So the Blackjack, I find, works for lower battle value. Well, this is all relevant, right? What's a lower battle value type game? 2,000 to 4,000 battle value, in my opinion, where you have enough to get some toys on the table, some interesting tech, but not a lot where you can go crazy, and you need to build in cross redundancy. And this is the starting point where I feel the Blackjack has some tremendous potential on the table. So back to this other list, my longbow list, as the example here. I might miss. Redundancy in Battletech is where you're trying to do something and you have to account for the dice working against you, your opponent working against you, and a little bit of Murphy's Law. So if the idea is I'm going to pound you into the dirt with long-range missiles, I just can't have one unit with long-range missiles because maybe it's not in position, maybe there's multiple targets to engage, maybe I'm going to miss, maybe you're attacking me and I have to run away. So I want to have redundancy. Likewise with my blocking unit, I take it a minimum of 2 Demolisher tanks. That's 4 AC-20s. That's 2 tank chassis on there. So in many lists, whatever you're trying to do, you want to have multiple units. They don't always have to be the same, but multiple units that can fulfill the same role. Now we break that. We get to the medium or lower battle value tiers where you start to say, I don't have the points for that. So I'm going to select a unit, and it's not going to be dedicated to just one thing. It's going to fulfill 2 roles. This is where the Blackjack comes in. So we have, this is stock, right? We have an autocannon 2. That's got some interesting range to it. That's got some range that can plink away at really any type of target short of infantry. It can plink away at tanks, try to score some motive hits. It can plink away at mechs and maybe start to soften them up a little bit, at least add something down, some downstream firepower down the table. Air units, it's got the range to deal with elevation. As long as they're coming into attack, coming down to get you, you can fire back. So you have something to do with this mech on the table. I can put it back and hang back and shoot. Sure, I'd like a rifleman. Sure, I'd like a Jaeger mech. But again, if we're a little bit point starved, I might not have the points to take that. Or if you do in some games, this is where if you take a big bad mech, it's kind of what I think of as the Easter egg effect. You put it all in one basket. So I could take a rifleman in a lower point game. If my opponent takes that out or ties it up, or I just make a bad tactical decision, that's a lot of points tied up in that. And I'm not saying don't do that. I've done that. But there are risks inherent in putting everything into one mech, where if you can spread the battle value wealth a little bit, it's a tactically better decision. Although, honestly, I don't always make the best tactical decisions when I go for glory on there. So the Blackjack, he could throw a little bit AC2 down there. Now when we get closer, I feel like it's almost like a mini grasshopper. The grasshopper mech has a wealth of lasers on it. So you close up and it has the heat sinks and it has the mobility. It just starts opening up with those lasers. You're like, what? Like, what the heck's going on? The Blackjack has that on a medium chassis. Medium chassis, medium armor. But it also has maneuverability and jump capacity on there. So what that kind of means is at long range, it can get into position and plink away. If something does threaten it, it runs away. At short range, when you need to kind of close in, it has the ability to hold its own, dish out some decent damage, but being a medium mech, more staying power than a light mech, more maneuverability than a heavier assault class mech. But if it does get outclassed, either through mech tonnage or opponent throwing enough stuff at it, or you realize, hey, I messed up, the dice, they're working against me, it can slip away on there. It's kind of almost an interesting guerrilla type, fighter type mech on there, where it picks the time and place of long range, short range of its engagement. And I have to say, this was a while ago, it really turned into one of my favorite mechs. And this is the further challenge with it. I'm being honest, initially I looked at it and it was incorrect, but it's great to evolve as a player. My play strategy is mostly big guns, never tire. You throw enough big guns at stuff, you can't really argue against that. So I viewed it as like the poor man's rifleman, or kind of the poor man's Jaeger mech or something like that. But I realized for the battle value in medium to smaller type games, it plugs in very, very nicely with how it works. It has a lot of opportunity. And above all else, with those autocannon 2s, just shooting. Especially at Endgame, this is the last piece where I've noticed the kind of the urban mech effect, where when I play my urban mech, it doesn't even move very fast. So it just gets into a position where I think the battlefield, when we look at the battlefield, you can see based on the mission where the contact point is going to be. Yes, we're going to be maneuvering. Yes, we're going to try and outflank. Yes, we're going to try and do tactics. But eventually, it's just going to be a slugfest in a certain area on the table. Terrain's going to influence it a little bit. So what I find with the urban mech is I march up my other mechs. I run, quote, the Urbie up, and then he just sits there. No one really shoots at him. But then as the battle continues to evolve, and now a lot of mechs have taken a lot of damage, arms blown off, weapons blown off, going to internals, so you're trying to like hide that side. Now all of a sudden, the autocannon on the urban mech is beast. Now all of a sudden, it's shooting and like causing crits and blowing stuff off, and you're like, what the heck? You've been ignoring it. I see that same effect on the Blackjack, where the autocannon 2s, okay, it gives me something to do every turn. I'll take that. But with the range and maneuverability later on in the game, now it's able to start shooting and going to internals and damaging stuff and really putting out the damage output. So think of this in this kind of direction here. Marauder. I've been playing around with the Marauder, so I have the Marauder on the mind. Marauder has no center torso armor, right? We just broke through. You just blasted it, did a lot of damage, and has no armor. We're now into internals. If you get hit, sure, look, I'd love to hit you with an AC-20 into internals, but I have to get up there. If I hit you with a PPC or a large laser, something with some decent output, that has the potential to cause a crit, and it's going to really mess up your internals. But so does an autocannon too. Once you bypass into the internals, every hit has that chance to start critting. And when you lose your armor and you go to internals, naturally you're going to start to withdraw. So it becomes that mech's going to withdraw, that Marauder's going to withdraw. So with that, yeah, you want to pound it with an autocannon 20. Yeah, you want to hit it with lasers and stuff, but are you going to be able to get up there and do that? Probably not, or it's going to be challenging to do that. You got the range with the AC-2s on the Blackjack. It's kind of like the Blackjack should be renamed the Assassin. And I always confuse the Assassin mech with the Thug type mech on there. But tremendous capacity. Blackjack, I think, is one of those pieces that should be in your mech lineup, in your lance, that you will always find a really, really good use for it.